Hi everyone, welcome to Monday Positivity, where we delve into topics that challenge, inspire, and uplift. And today we're diving deep into the powerful concept of forgiveness. I'm your host Parul, and in this episode, we'll explore the notion of disciplined forgiveness. I chose this name, disciplined forgiveness, because I think uh, it's an apt title for this episode because it encapsulates the idea of forgiveness as a deliberate and intentional practice. It also highlights the notion that forgiveness requires discipline, a conscious effort to let go of resentment and release ourselves from the burden of past hurts. Because discipline is what? Discipline is a conscious effort for something. So, disciplined forgiveness would mean that you need to, if you are not ready to forgive, maybe you need to, be disciplined. You need to have a conscious effort to release yourself from this burden of not forgiving. And additionally, it emphasizes the importance of setting boundaries and making thoughtful choices in the forgiveness process, which aligns well with the theme of empowerment and self care. And I'll talk about all of it. I'll talk about the thoughtful choices that you need to make while you decide to forgive someone. And first, let's try to understand the importance of forgiveness. Because forgiveness isn't just a virtue, it's a transformative force that can actually liberate both the forgiver and the forgiven. It's an important aspect of personal growth and emotional well being. As human beings, we're bound to make mistakes. It's an inevitable part of our journey, but it's how we respond to those mistakes that truly defines us, right? And I think there is also the universal call for forgiveness. In many philosophies and religious teachings, you will see forgiveness holds a central place. Even Jesus Christ emphasized the importance of forgiveness. I read somewhere that he talked about it. That if we seek forgiveness from the divine, we must also extend forgiveness to others. And I think this principle actually transcends religious boundaries. It speaks to the inherent need for compassion and understanding. So we need to embrace forgiveness for that only and also for self healing, right? Because what about those who may not subscribe to religious beliefs? People who are not religious, who don't want to follow any teachings. The beauty of forgiveness is that it's not bound by any religion or any dogma. It's a universal truth that resonates with all of us. We've all been on both sides of forgiveness. We've been the one seeking it, and we've been the one granting it. And through this journey, we also come to realize that forgiving others is as much about setting ourselves free as it is about releasing others from the burden of our resentment. So, forgiveness is a path to self healing and to self acceptance. For those of us who struggle with self criticism, who struggle with self forgiveness, cultivating a habit of forgiving others can be profoundly liberating. When we extend grace to others, we create a space for grace within ourselves. We learn to let go of self criticism and we embrace our own imperfections with compassion and understanding. So, as you learn to forgive others, you also learn to forgive yourself. And then forgiveness actually is very important in spirituality, in spiritual teachings across cultures and traditions. Forgiveness holds a sacred place. It's not just a moral obligation, but a profound spiritual practice. The concept of forgiveness is actually deeply intertwined with our spiritual journey. And it is another path to divine grace. Many spiritual traditions emphasize that forgiveness is not just about interpersonal relationships, but it's also about our relationship with the divine, with our higher selves. By forgiving others, we open ourselves to receiving divine grace and blessings. It's a way of aligning ourselves with higher principles of compassion, love, and harmony. It's a way of aligning ourselves with, uh, high frequency, I would say high vibrations. In spiritual teachings, ego is often identified as a source of, suffering and separation. Forgiveness actually helps you overcome ego. Through forgiveness, we transcend the ego's narrow confines and we connect with our true divine nature. By releasing resentment, by letting go of resentment, we dissolve the barriers that separate us from ourselves and others. Ego only separates you from, yours, like ego creates that barrier. And if you learn to forgive, you can actually dissolve that barrier. Just as meditation or prayer is spiritual practice, forgiveness can be cultivated as a spiritual discipline as well. It requires mindfulness, it requires humility, it also requires a willingness to surrender our egoic attachments. So, through daily acts of forgiveness, you can actually purify the heart and deepen your spiritual awareness. Now, I also talked about in the beginning of this episode, I also talked about some practices. Um, One of the thing that I wanted to talk about was the myth of reconciliation. One common misconception about forgiveness is that it necessitates reconciliation, that forgiving someone means welcoming them back into your life with open arms. See, reconciliation can be a beautiful outcome of forgiveness, but it is not always practical or even advisable. Sometimes the healthiest choice for your well being is to create distance from someone who has harmed you, physically or mentally or emotionally. So you need to understand. So the practice would be to understand, to set boundaries with compassion. Forgiveness is not about condoning harmful behavior or allowing ourselves to be mistreated repeatedly. It's about releasing the grip of resentment and reclaiming our inner peace. Setting boundaries is an act of self love and self respect. By choosing not to engage with someone who has hurt you, you're prioritizing your well being without harboring bitterness or grudges, right? So, forgiveness also gives you this liberating power of choice. It is very important to recognize that forgiveness is a personal journey, one that empowers us to reclaim uh, our power. We have the right to choose who we allow into our lives and who we keep at arm's length. And sometimes the most profound act of forgiveness is the decision to let go and move forward. Forgive, let go, and move forward, even if it means doing so without the presence of the person who hurt us, right? You don't have to tell them, you can just forgive them and you can just let them go and move forward. By embracing the freedom to forgive without the obligation to reconcile, we reclaim our power and autonomy. We transcend the roles of victim and perpetrator, stepping into the realm of empowered creators of our own destiny. See, forgiveness becomes a sacred act of self liberation, a pathway to inner peace and wholeness if we embrace freedom through forgiveness, right? And as I conclude today's episode, I encourage you to reflect on the role of forgiveness in your own life. How can you cultivate a spirit of forgiveness while honoring your boundaries and your well being? Remember, forgiveness is not about relinquishing control, it's about reclaiming it with compassion and wisdom. I also want to encourage you to explore forgiveness as a spiritual practice in your own life. How can you infuse your daily interactions with the spirit of forgiveness? Because forgiveness is not just a gesture of goodwill, it's a sacred act that opens the door to profound healing and spiritual awakening. And lastly, I invite you to reflect on the power of forgiveness in your own life. How can you cultivate a spirit of disciplined forgiveness? Because forgiveness is not a sign of weakness, rather, a testament to your strength and resilience as human beings. So that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, may you find healing through the practice of forgiveness and take care.